What's up, Gear Mortals? Trey, Xavier here. I am with Sahaj Ticotin, and we're going to talk about a subject that I know very little about, that I've sort of have a general understanding of how it works, but haven't actually tried to do it myself. It's something that's pretty common in mixing, but you tend to use it as a compositional tool, and that's sidechaining. And so we're going to talk about how you did it on this song that's on the new Meytal album. The song is called Broken Circus Ride.
Yeah. I wrote it with this absolute douchebag.
Yeah. And
total douchebag guy. Worst dude ever.
A beanie-clad douchebag.
The beanie was involved.
And I think I was probably wearing it when I came up with this thing that
absolutely. You were sick, actually. You had a cold.
I was super sick.
Yeah.
I came in here. I was like, I'm not missing this day. We got to get it done, Sahaj.
Yeah.
And it happened, and it worked out anyways. So you can hear how sick it is, and I was. What exactly did you do to it? All I did was play these two little guitar parts that sound really cool, and then you applied some magic. And what you're going to talk about today is what you did and how you do it.
Yeah, so basically, Trey came up with this really cool combination of guitars for this song. So I'll play how it fits in the song, and just pay attention to the guitars in the background. I'll start out at the top of the song so you hear what's going on.
It's broken like an old string, wounded like the bird's wing, faded like some old jeans, waiting to be tossed aside.
So obviously the guitars are sort of like there to be some sort of like a loop, like almost like an audio loop to make it feel sort of urban. If you guys are fans of a band called Polyphia, which I believe we all are, that was sort of the inspiration for the track, was to sort of get a Polyphia-esque vibe going with this. And obviously they don't do things with vocals, so I wanted to do something with music on top. So the first thing is when we're looking at the guitars, let's listen to what they're doing with nothing on them. So there's a few things happening. Here's the guitars by themselves, just unprocessed. They seem pretty basic. They're not really necessarily moving or creating color. So the first thing I wanted to do is I add a little chorus, just to give it a little bit of width. Chorus is
my least favorite effect in general.
Sure.
But I feel like I'm always using it wrong. Like,
when
you've got it on here, it widens it up a little bit, makes it
sound...
I
mean, it's just making it sort of like give it a little bit more color, which is all I was going for. Right. And then I EQ'd and compressed it a little bit. Make it punch a little bit louder. Now here's the moneymaker. So, in traditional sidechaining, what people do is they set up what you would call a dummy or a ghost kick drum. And that kick drum would be used to trigger the sidechain. And essentially what you do when you sidechain something is you put a compressor on the channel, and every time the kick drum sends a signal to that compressor, the compressor acts accordingly and lowers the volume. So if the kick drum is going like this, every single time it kicks, the volume dips down in rhythm with the song. You don't want to hear that kick drum, so you make it a ghost. You bus it nowhere. It doesn't go anywhere. It's just there to trigger the sidechain.
Okay.
It doesn't do anything. Now in a dance track, like an EDM track, you hear that a lot because they'll have the kick drum, the actual kick drum will be out triggering the sidechain as well, but then all of a sudden the kick drum will go away and you'll still hear the music going
kind of pulsating.
And a lot of people don't even know where that comes from. So the funny thing about sidechaining is as it applies to EDM is that it was actually invented because DJs used to go to places with terrible sound systems. So when you would play a song with a kick drum that's going like this, boom, 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 the sound system wasn't able to handle the low end. So every time the kick drum would hit, the volume of the rest of the song would drop immensely. So every time the kick drum went, it would go, wah, 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 wah. And that's where that sound came from overloading sound systems.
And then people tried to emulate that in the studio.
It just became, you got used to it because you go to a club and that's how every song sounded. So it
Yeah.
just became part of the process. And obviously, as sound systems became better, you were able to manipulate it in your own way. Now, as it applies to the Sound Toys Tremulator, what I do with this is I've used a bunch of plugins. Waves has a one knob, what do they call it? One knob pumper, which is their version of doing it. It's a little non-musical for me. There are a couple of others. This tremulator is such an awesome, awesome thing. It does so many things awesome. But what I do is I set it to ramp up. So you have all these different settings that you can do. I go to ramp up, click on ramp up. It makes it literally ramp up. So it's just an upswing in volume. I set it to a half note, which is where this works for this song. And when I activate it, it does this.
Wow. So it achieves the same effect without the complicated idea of
It's
having to
not-
have this ghost kick drum.
Right. I'm not
And-
side chaining it. I'm literally using a filtered attack, but it's set to the tempo. It's in sync.
Got
And
it.
then the last thing I do is I add a little delay so that it doesn't feel quite as hard. Smooths
So
it
it's
out a
kinda
little bit.
carrying
Yeah,
when
so it's
you-
got a little color that's sort of cycling and swirling around.
Wow.
So when you apply that to the rest of the song, it sounds like this.
It's broken like an old string, wounded like a bird's wing, faded like some old jeans, waiting to be tossed
And if you take out the tremulator, it actually changes the way the song feels quite a bit.
buried under self-esteem, full of pain and full of pride. I wanna wake you up.
It's just there. It's like way more like, hi, I'm a guitar part. Hello.
Yeah, and it sounds less guitar. It sounds more like a sample, which is ultimately the goal in trying to make when you're creating these elements. And I use side chaining, actual side chaining in a creative way for different kinds of tracks too. One of the things I really like doing, which I'm not doing in this particular song, but it's another thing you can try, is to take the actual, even if it's a rock song, by the way. You take a big pad, a big giant synthy pad that's either maybe even overdriven or just really fat sort of synth pad, and layer it into your chorus, supporting whatever the chords are, and you use the kick drum, the actual kick drum of whatever the drummer's playing, whether it's complicated or not complicated, but you set up a side chain for that too, but with a fast, what you want it to do is you want it to dip, but you want it to return super fast. So what it ends up sounding like, and this is something I can't show you right this second, but what ends up sounding like is it a little bit like all underneath the track, but set exactly to what the kick drum's doing. And it adds sort of like an angry bounce to what you're doing, even though the guitars are sort of the dominant thing if you're doing a rock track or something progressive, you know? But yeah, you can apply it that way. If you want, I can show you the proper way to set up a side chain.
Yeah, so like the kind of old school,
Yeah.
quote unquote old
So
school
we'll
way.
replace the tremulator by putting in a compressor. This is the standard I use. I'm a Steinberg guy, so I'm using Nuendo. This is the standard one. Easy in
This
Nuendo.
is just a stock compressor.
Just a very well. Their stock compressor is sort of complex nowadays because it has all these side chaining things built into it. But essentially, you want to do at least 3-to-1 as a ratio because otherwise you're just not going to get enough of a sucking feel out of it. In Nuendo and Cubase, there's a very, very simple sidechain button and that automatically does it. So what you do is you put that there and you go find your kick drum. Let's say I'll use the kick channel because I have it bust to a group. So I'll open up the kick channel here, and very simply your sends, super simple, right at the bottom, sidechain, clean guitars, bam.
Wow.
And now it's sent, but it's not activated. You just activate it. You have the option to send it pre or post fader, which is pretty important if you're doing something with a lot of rides. You want to make sure that the signal that's going to the sidechain doesn't change volume when you change your fader. But if for this case, we're going to leave it because the kick drum's not going anywhere, so it's going to be post fader. And it goes into this. And now we're going to play the song with, I'm actually going to mute the vocals so you can get a little bit more of a vibe off of it. Here we go. And so when it comes in, we're going to mess with these settings to make sure it sounds musical. So you see it's dumping a little bit, right? So now it's just doing a little bit, but now we're going to hit the threshold harder.
Oh yeah.
So going back to the same spot.
Just like nicely ducks it down when the kick
Yeah,
drum
when the
hits.
kick's hitting. Obviously, there's a lot of kick drums in this one, so it's sort of not that musical, which is why I had it set to a quarter, to a
Right.
half step. But you can tell how it works. It just starts at.
Yeah. And people, so a lot of times when people are mixing, they use this to make sure that the front elements, the lead vocal or the lead guitar or whatever is happening at the moment, doesn't get walked on by the other elements or something like that. So you can sidechain anything to anything else. Just
Well,
about.
sidechaining a lot of the times is sort of one of your go-tos just to fix problems.
Right.
So what happens is if you're in a mix where a lot of the time something like the bass guitar is just sort of competing with the kick drum, and yes, you can do a lot with EQ or try and make them live in different spots, but the real sort of solution is a volume solution. So if you literally just take your kick drums and have it knock down the bass half dB or a dB every time the kick drum hits, you'll get more punch without losing the size of the bass guitar. Otherwise, you have to lower the whole thing. I actually don't do it that much anymore. I used to do it more, but I have more fun sort of carving out the frequencies. So if I like bass to live around 80 and 100, and I like the kick drum to live around 80 to 40. So if those two guys are sort of playing properly, they don't step on each other quite as much.
Yeah.
You know, but it's still something you have to sort of finesse in order to make it sound sexy.
So that's a mix solution kind of a way of using it. But in this case, you're using it more as in an artistic way. It changes the feel of the part and really of the whole song. It's not just this solution that you have to do to make things fit together and work right. It literally changes the impact of what you're doing artistically.
Yeah, and what's super important to remember also is that the clean guitar part, you know, as we were working on it together, there was no point in the writing process where I didn't know I wasn't going to sidechain it. I knew I was going to sidechain it.
I didn't know that sitting there recording it, but you were like, oh yeah.
I knew exactly that by playing, you know, and what you want to do when you're doing this as a technique for writing, you know, one of the things that's great is you want the part to be sort of busy, because the sidechaining is going to take away detail. So if it's interesting on its own and it sort of sustains interest in terms of the patterns, like what I love about what you actually played, which is actually worth pointing out, is that the one guitar is sort of being... So it's like quarter note, then triplets, you know? So it's like 1, done, 2, 3. So like it's doing something that has already sort of a non-linear pattern, and then the other one is completely linear.
Yeah.
It's absolutely just 16th notes over and over again, right? Even though you're phrasing the notes in a non-linear way, the part itself is linear by being 16th notes. And when you put them together, it makes it fairly busy. But then when you sidechain it, the details sort of, you have to lean in to hear what the details of what the parts are. And that makes it interesting over the course of the album, you know?
That's cool. Whenever I come up with 2 guitar parts, I always try to make them rhythmically different but fit together.
Sure.
You know, and I think this I think this one I came up with on the spot.
Yeah,
like, there were other
absolutely.
ideas that I came up with that were kind of prefabricated, but this one we were just like, hey, let's just dink around a little bit.
And if I remember, it was either the second or the last one we came up with.
Yeah.
'Cause I think there was another one you did that I didn't end up fleshing out, even though I really liked it.
Yeah.
But I didn't like you enough to include it on the album.
That happens to me a lot. What are you gonna do? You were like, oh, it's so good. We could make money off this song, but Trey wrote it.
Yeah, it was one of those things. We had like a band meeting about it. We discussed whether or not
You were like, no, kibosh.
You know what?
But
One
it
song
just
is enough.
happened to work for that texture perfectly. And as soon as you heard it, you were like, sidechain.
Oh yeah.
Bam.
Yeah, no, I knew,
That's really
I knew where we
interesting.
were going with that.
Yeah.
So I mean, and it applies to any instrument, by the way. You can do it to vocals. You can do it to. If any of you guys, one of the things that I really enjoy doing is sort of bringing elements that people use in pop records to rock records, and it doesn't matter if it's a metal record or just a butt rock radio record or whatever it is, but sample packs and things like Exhale output. Exhale's it's a contact patch, and it's made by a company called Output. But what it is essentially it's just a huge library of morphed out vocal samples, and it's really, really cool. But you can create your own. You can sing a part behind something similar to the way we did with the guitars, and then either use the tremolator or set up a ghost kick drum to do the side chaining. And remember, the thing with side chaining that's awesome, especially with the tremolator, is you can set it. You can do a triplet side chain. It can literally be anything that you can set a grid to, you can set a side chain to. So it's literally a way. It's almost like a slicer that you can use. I know a lot of people like to use what I guess they call it. I guess in the tremolator it's called. Let's see. Yeah, they just call it a filter because it's just a square filter. But you can do.
Because then it just
like
cuts off instead of a.
Here's a square filter with like 16th on it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. And then you mess with the depth.
It's like instant. What's the Green Day songs? When September Ends?
Yeah.
Or whatever.
And what's great about this plugin, by the way, also is that you get to decide what part of the pucket it sits in. I have them all centered out. You can actually make it feel like it's behind the beat.
Oh, wow.
Or make it feel like it's on top of the beat.
Damn, that's cool.
Yeah. It makes a big difference in how it all feels. But anyway, ramp up.
Just to be clear, we don't have any stock in Sound Toys, right? Like, they're not paying us to do this.
Hopefully they will someday.
It'd be nice. Sound Toys, if you got, my bank account number.
Yeah.
No, but you can do this with basically any compressor or a tremolo kind of a sound.
If you don't have tremolator,
use
a sidechain. Because use an actual traditional compressor sidechain.
Yeah.
Because without the I've used a bazillion other plugins that supposedly do the same thing. In fact, should we show them? Should we show them a comparison?
Pull up one other.
Because you'll see immediately that it's not quite as cool. So here's a pumper set to, this is the waves pumper set to the exact same thing as the tremolator.
Yeah.
It's not cool.
But it only has one knob, so
it is one knob, but it doesn't.
What are you gonna do?
It doesn't do this. It doesn't do that. The way it's closing is more cool. It's just a thing. But anyway.
Yeah, but you can achieve the same effect a bunch of different ways, but side chaining is the jam.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool things.
There's a certain feel to it that you can't really replicate.
No. And what's amazing about it is it applies to every single instrument. There's no instrument that you can't think of. You can sidechain overheads in the drums, and it makes things really cool. And remember, you can also do an expander instead of a compressor. So what'll happen is instead of it being it'll be bow, 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 which could be really useful in aggressive music.
Yeah. Wow. All right, so this was really interesting, and I feel like I could use this in a million different places. Now it's just going to be a matter of not using it not overdoing it, I guess. Right?
Yeah, what's really important to think about it is just put it in your toolbox.
Yeah.
And anything that you're not getting, if you feel like, oh, that part's just sort of sitting there. If any part, anything, any instrument, and if you just feel like, I don't know, it's just not sitting there, before you completely dump it, try this. Yeah. And if this works, if this might give you a completely different perspective on the part.
Yeah. Great. Well, hey, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And be sure to check out the new Meytal album. It's called
The Witness.
The Witness.
Yeah, and it's out April 5th.
It's out April 5th, which today is tomorrow, but by the time you see this, it's already out. So check it out. The song, once again, is called Broken Circus Ride. I wrote this cool little guitar part for it. Yep. Sahaj sings his ass off on it. Meytal on the drums, and it's a banger of an album. You're definitely going to want to check it out. That I am getting paid. If you buy a copy, I'll make
That's
money.
Right.
If
you
want to
pennies.
support both of us,
yeah.
give us your Spotify pennies. We need them real bad.
Awesome.
All right, guys, don't forget to mash that subscribe button for more reviews and original content, and we'll see you real soon.